What's up guys, welcome back to the iherng podcast, and today we will answer a question from email. Hi Sean, we are a couple of 34 years old and 31 years old. I am born and working in Seremban, girlfriend born in Johor and working in KL. We plan to settle down in Seremban and also plan to get married later. We have about 400,000 of saving, FD and shares. Our net monthly income is around 9,000. Over the past few months, we listened to a lot of your videos. Thank you. We already seen more than 12 houses, including new house, sub-sale, second-hand. For your information, Seremban new double-story terrace house is at least 600 to 750,000. New developments mostly are very far from my workplace. Only a few is nearer. Our current plan is to buy a second-hand house because price is lower, hence monthly commitment lower. We plan to stay at a smaller house for now, then buy a bigger dream house after 10 years. Now we are interested in a second-hand house with final price of 338,000. I feel that this is the best choice because the location is very convenient. Also, monthly installment is as low as 1,500. However, this house is more than 30 years old, so renovation is estimated to be at least 100,000. So, we estimate we have to pour in 200,000 for down payment, renovation and furniture. Additional information: girlfriend heard many stories from her relatives and friends about couples buying house who struggle about money and quarrel about money, especially when need money for marriage and kids. She don't want to give up KL salary to move into smaller town and struggle. So our question is, should we buy this old second-hand house by spending most of our savings, but monthly installment is very easy on us, which is estimated at 200,000 initial payment and 1,500 per month? Or should we buy those new development with zero down payment and less renovation needed, but higher monthly commitment, which is around 3,000 a month? What is your advice for us? Appreciate your kind reply. Thank you, Vincent. So thank you very much for the email. 34 years old, 31 years old, boyfriend, girlfriend trying to settle down. One is born and raised in Seremban, trying to settle in Seremban. One born in Johor, working in KL right now. So their question is whether to buy a brand new house that has higher monthly commitments but lower upfront payments, or to buy an existing old house that's cheaper but actually you need to pump in more money. Yeah, this is also a very popular question among folks in KL, but let's go into some details that I want to talk about also. First of all, they have seen more than 12 houses altogether, which includes new house, sub-sale, second-hand. For those who are not familiar with the channel, there's these 4 basic steps by Sean. First, to get your intent right. Second is to find out your affordability. And the third step, which is to go and visit 20 different property based on the range of affordability that you have, which includes old property, new property, sub-sale, apartment, landed terrace house, landed cluster, semi-D, whatever, based on the range of budget that you have. This indirectly develops several things. Number one, it develops your palette as an investor or a buyer. You really know what kind of products you like. A lot of people may think that yes, apartments do fetch higher ROI, but I don't like the maintenance. I don't like small unit in the sky. I want old school landed. Although it's a little bit more expensive, I'm fine. No right, no wrong. Ultimately, it's entirely up to you. The other thing that you will develop throughout this entire journey is also the immunity to sales pitch. Especially when you walk into sales galleries, then the entire setting is designed for the salesperson to close your deal, right? Please be mindful of that. Also, when you go into the secondary market, then you will get used to all the sales hooks like, hey, you want to show interest first, place a deposit first, then I will go and speak to the owner and see what they will say, all this kind of thing. You will get immune to that. Then you also get to familiarize yourself with the setting of negotiation. And the third thing, among couples especially, that is more important, the clarification of intent. Throughout this entire journey, right, like when you all over dinner, you discuss about your dream home. Hey, it needs to be a landed where it needs to be at least 24 feet, 75 feet, it needs to be at least 2,000 square feet, whatsoever lah. But in real life, there are just a lot of other constraints within these conversations, like budget, like location, availability, preference, and etc. So for folks like me who are just investing myself, right, I like it, I buy. I think it's good, I buy. But when it comes to a two-person decision, then it gets really tricky because sometimes things change too. Especially like when she speaks to her relatives, right? suddenly there's a new perspective, new information into the equation. The entire setting of the filter for the properties to buy, right, suddenly change already. So this is why I would encourage young folks, especially couples, to really go set appointments, go see properties. It kind of sound like a dating show already, but eventually you will know each other better, because suddenly, hey, why you don't like landed? Apparently folks from Penang do not have this sense of romanticism towards landed living. Only Klang Valley folks, Johor folks have this deep need of landed terrace house as their first home. Yeah, and also thank you for sharing the insight. Like Seremban double story terrace house is already 600,000 to 700,000, and that's like not main like Seremban city. You know, now it's like Seremban 2. Then you have those deeper at Bandar Sri Sendayan. Then you have Nilai Impian, like not really Seremban core Seremban anymore. And just when we think like, you cannot buy KL house, you go Seremban. Now we go Seremban also cannot buy. Then after the discussion, they found two houses. One is a second-hand house at 338,000. It's the best choice in terms of location because very convenient. Also, the monthly commitment is little. And the first thing compliments to both of you where you have 400,000 of saving. That's very admirable. That's solid, and that's a tough part because for renovation you need to put upfront around 200,000 for down payment and renovation. So that's the problem here, because if you were to go for a zero down payment landed property that's new, the monthly installment is 3,000, but the upfront payment is 100,000 less. Okay, old or new? Before that, right? Again, before that, I think what needs to be clarified here is this. Who is actually buying the property? Is it only one person name, either you or her? That's very important because, as I mentioned in the channel before, I don't really encourage people sharing name in buying properties, man. Especially couples, because unfortunately a lot of cases where boyfriend girlfriend buy a house for their marriage, right? Unfortunately the marriage couldn't even withstand the construction period of the property, and this is somewhat in line with whatever the relatives and friends talk about, because when it comes to money conversation, then it becomes really sticky. So I think before we talk about the new versus old, that's something that you need to clarify with her first. Who is actually buying the house? Personally, I would suggest you buy the house. You put your name, your income in and buy the house. Whether or not later, right, she wants to help pay the installment a little bit or whatsoever, fine. Thank you very much. I love you a lot. Okay? Because there's this statement where you say that she don't want to give up her life in KL. So when you buy a house in Seremban, are you expecting her to stay? That's one very big caveat. As is clearly mentioned and communicated, right? She don't want to struggle for money after moving into a smaller town. But actually Seremban now also quite happening, but it really depends on what kind of job role and etc. If you're an employee, you're working for a boss, can you look for a similar job then? So this is then a discussion about lifestyle more than just property. Because the worst thing is that both of you share the name, right? After you put in a renovation and, hey, I'm not leaving and I still need to rent a house in KL. I'm not going to stay in Seremban with you. You know what? You rent there, I will stay here, right? We will meet each other during weekends. So who is paying the rent? And the worst case is there are no clear right or wrong in situations like this. So if the income here, net income is 9,000, so let's assume both equal with 4,500. 4,500 income, can you buy the house at 1,500? Yes. So if you want to pay the house at the higher monthly installment part at 3,000 per month, it's clearly out of budget. So let's not even go there. Okay, that's my suggestion. In this situation, you clearly cannot afford the bigger house because you are betting on her financials to get the house, whereas she is not even confident in moving in Seremban with you together. So why risk? So you also write about renovation being 100,000. A few questions here. Have you done any renovations before? Because a lot of people just pluck from the sky, say, 100,000, and it's like a story topping competition, you know. Oh, my friend house, I do 150 and nothing. Your friend cheap lah, my one 200,000 also nothing. Then like don't know for what on this kind of story setting. So the cool thing about renovation is this. I always divide renovation into necessities, right? Absolute must-haves. If not, the house is not livable, then you will have a nice to have. So it's actually a level like maybe like 200,000, right? Is 200,000 merely for all the necessary one or the nice to have things? And the necessary things means like, okay, structural change. Is there like structural cracks in the house? Or is there a need to really redo all the wiring? Or is there a need to replace a water storage tank? Or is there a need to replace all the toilets or whatsoever? Are there ways to salvage all this? Okay, then all the plug points, all these needs to change, because if you don't, later catch fire, the whole house gone. So these are the needs, right? You need them to function well. Electricity, water, sewerage, structure, boundary elements, which is like door, window, gate, and things like that. Then we move in further. These are then the levels of nice to have, which is like, oh, I must have furniture. Furniture, you got cheap furniture, expensive furniture, ma. Kitchen cabinet, got cheap way to do it, very expensive way to do it, ma. And when you are setting 400,000 as a budget to sai lang, right, to really finish everything, right, of course it will finish for you. And that's the very weird thing about human behavior. If I were to give you 100,000 in budget, you will complete it in 100,000. You will find ways to complete it in 100,000. But if you know that you have extra money left to be spent, you know what? Renovation once in a lifetime only, ma. Right? Must treat ourselves better. We work so hard, right? Get a better chair lah, get a better kitchen lor, get a better bed lor, get a better everything. So those are the main expenses. And renovations beyond necessities, right, all are expenses. So a quick way to really control the wild thoughts about the renovation cost will be to directly engage some contractors, get 2 to 3 quotations, because when you visit the house, you would have took some pictures, right? So using those pictures against the ideal situation that you want to have, what would be the budget like? Maybe the budget is 70,000, not including furniture. Or maybe the budget is 100,000 because there's a leakage in the toilet, you need to replace everything. And do tell the contractor to itemize by space, which means that when you go into the house, okay, the car porch area, most likely you want to redo the roof for the car porch. Okay, how much does it cost? What materials will be used? Then for the living space, can you stick with the existing structure? Do you want to hack walls? Must you hack walls? Then what's wrong with the master bedroom? So you go space by space, so you go by trades of work and etc. Suddenly then you will know that, hey, there are things that I can choose not to do, there are things that I can choose to do. And this is the worst part about renovation also, because it takes too long and the entire process can be painful if you are not familiar with it. There will be a lot of opportunities for upselling. For example, like when you extend the wall, right? Hey, extend all the way lah. Just when you do things, right, one shot, do everything is cheaper. You know, you want to do progressively, right? Do one shot, and the families will also say, do one shot. If not, right, after you stay 5 years, you want to renovate again. So 麻烦, might as well just finish everything one go. So actually that's the issue. And knowing that you have the extra stash of cash sitting behind, right, it's very tempting actually. My suggestion is to get quotations from the ground, see who got contractor, come and see the house a little bit, see already. Then if I want to estimate how much, right, is there renovation loan to be given, or I can just merely move in temporarily for the 5 years. Can I actually live within or not? Because if this confirm is going to be the marriage house, that the house that both of you will move in after you all get married, then maybe it's something to be celebrated. Okay, then they agree, okay, we dump in 150,000. If not, right, I'll just make good 50 to 60,000. And one more thing about this terrace house, right, you are buying it because you think that the ultimate price 338,000 versus the new project at monthly installment of 3,000, I think is around 700,000. So 338 versus 700,000. In the eye of investment, right, the goal is never to buy cheap properties, right? Just because it's cheaper, then I'll go buy. No. Actually, the right way to think about it is against the median price. If 700,000 located very far and the median price is 600,000, you're paying 700, you are not very smart. But at 338,000, what's the median price of that taman? If the entire taman there is transacting, or the latest transaction 3 months ago is 400,000, you are buying at 338, then it's pretty smart. But if you are getting it 338,000 just because you like the direction, you like the house or whatsoever, right, and it's the market price, it's still fine. Just don't buy anything above market value unless you're really clear like why you want to buy it. Because you mentioned that this taman is already more than 30 years, there will be a lot of data available in the market, and you can also go and see the neighbors, right, how people do their renovation. If you want to extend all the way like that, you extend the front. And for terrace house, it's almost very similar one. You just extend the carport, then you extend the master bedroom on top, and then you extend the kitchen behind. So can you afford all this one go, or can you do it progressively? Because ultimately you still need to save money for what? For marriage, for the honeymoon, and for the kids, right? So ultimately, right, I see the lack of confidence, although you all have 400,000. So ultimately it's still a money problem here lah. Because if this money, if I were to put into renovation, then I need to compromise my wedding and etc. Again, if you got money, no issue at all. But now when there's a restriction in resources, do communicate with your loved ones. Chat about priorities, and that will also resolve the previous concern of whether can you or do you want to live together in Seremban kind of situation. Is it possible you then move up to KL? Just a suggestion, right? And finally, we reached the conversation about new property versus old landed properties. Okay, both are landed, but just that older ones are 350, newer ones are 750 in Seremban. Which one should you pick if money is not an issue, right? Okay, so now in terms of location wise, the older one wins, like you say. So this one no need to argue lah. So the next point to think about is condition. When you say that the old house is 30 years old already and the new house is just newly built. Newly built will tend to have lower risk of major renovation because everything is new, assumingly lah, right? There won't be any leakage problem, there won't be any major problems. But for houses of 30 years also, there's a way to look at the condition actually. Like when you think about 30 years ago, if it's constantly or frequently stayed by a family, right, constantly being used, there won't be any issue. The worst one is when it's abandoned for like 5 to 10 years time. Then I think everything gotta change. Because this sounds weird, but there's this saying by a contractor that affects me a lot. Houses are meant to move. When he say houses meant to move, it meant like when your car parks at the carport or your car drives past, right, there will be vibrations, okay? Then when humans walk around, run around, your kids climb up the stairs or whatsoever, there will be movements. When you turn on the tap, when you turn on the socket, when you do anything in the house, there will be movement and there will be things flowing. When things starts flowing, then that will resolve a lot of issues like piping issues, because ultimately when you know how piping works, and because you have pipes of different shapes and forms joining together, right? And if these seals are just left behind for a very, very long time and suddenly you move in and you start using the house again, this tends to crack. The same analogy that he gave me is like shoes, right? Sports shoes, if you wear every day, you can actually wear it for very, very long. When you wear it once, then you put it into the storeroom, then suddenly a year later you take it out and wear it again, right? It will suddenly crack because of a lot of gums or just got hardened. Similar concept, similar principles, but to me the logic answer to that is whenever there's human beings living in the house, we will always point out things that are not right. For example, oh, leakage, let's fix it. Hey, this one cracked, let's investigate what's wrong. Here the internet not strong, let's fix it. So there will be constant update to the house condition. So if you are buying from an owner who is living, just moved out, I think it's not the worst case scenario. The worst one is when it's abandoned for years. Then there will be an issue. And the issue here is the degree of renovation required for the house. So in terms of condition, for new house or old house, right, it depends. Then the next thing to think about is in terms of design and specification. Are these two houses the same size? Even if they are in the same size, in terms of housing design, old house, new house, we have a big difference in design. For example, for terrace house, right, the main difference will always be in the staircase area. If it's a dogleg staircase smack in the center, right, splitting the living room and the dining and kitchen behind, that kind of layout, you'll feel a bit tight because your entire visual experience is not nice. You'll need to walk around weirdly within the house. Whereas for the latest design of terrace houses, the most efficient way is to actually park the staircase on one side of the house straight away 2 flights up, because that saves up all the space and you have like 20 feet or 19 feet clearance to design everything else. Suddenly, even if you open the door, the same specification will feel bigger in the new design. Partly also because of structural innovations, like now you don't have beams anymore in the house, or the way of construction is just way more advanced. You will have tidier beams and columns in strategic areas, not like last time I built you a house and candy, don't make so much noise. Then in terms of infrastructure, I assume it's in a township format. And when I buy a new house, I will look into several things like street lamps. Are they in place? So what's the height? Okay, this is a bit too freaky, but the height actually matters to me. Is it decorated? The drainage, are those exposed drains or are those concealed drains? Old ones always have exposed drain, new ones will have concealed drains, which is safer, which is cleaner. You don't have that very weird neighbor who constantly throw rubbish and clog up the whole drain. No such issue. The third one then will be the road width and road condition. And this is something to check in the old house also, like existing neighbors around there will be part of the things to consider about also, but we'll talk about that later. The last one will be security measures. If one is gated and guarded versus open, right, you know my position on this already. Like at 350,000, maybe I can tolerate that it's open purely based on trust of the community to really protect each other, have an eye for each other. Then I'll figure out my own security measures within the compound of my house. But if I'm paying 700 to 800,000, right, I may expect a guardhouse at least. You know, every weekend you travel to KL to look for your girlfriend, right? Then you really like, hey, is my house safe? Let's make sure my house is safe. If not, break-in happens or whatsoever. Then in terms of lifestyle, which one suits you more? And this one only you can answer. Like when it's distance to work, then it's good in terms of amenities. But because you grow up in Seremban, I assume you are very close to town. You grow up in the town, therefore the old house will suit you better. New house may be in a new environment, a new township. Like driving half an hour is not feasible for you. So that one only you will know. So these are the consideration between new and old. But ultimately it's boiled down to intent. Is this an investment or is this an own stay? If it's investment, right, newer properties tends to fetch higher price. Why? Because they come with better design solutions. For example, now it's stratified. Means that you got guardhouse, you got gate. The house, although it's the same size, but it feels bigger. It has bigger built out, higher ceiling, tidy structural elements. And I mentioned this during the last episode also, because if it's an old neighborhood, and if it's an old neighborhood without any gated community or without any guards or whatsoever, without any security measures, I think there will be a ceiling to the selling price ultimately. Because the entire target audience will be different between these two segments. One ultimately is talking about 3,000 per month installment. At least you need to have like 10,000 or 9,000 income per month. This one you can have 4,000 to 5,000. There's a huge gap in income, and that will also result in a huge gap in expectation. At least if I buy a 1 million house within Seremban area, the least I expect is safety and security, right? But then, should you compromise that for convenience in that sense? That's entirely up to you, because the entire difference here will be your familiarity with the location. And I guess a classic example to this will be like Seremban 2. When Seremban 2 came out, everybody was very surprised by it, borderline mocking them, saying that it's never gonna happen. Who is gonna drive up so long, so far out, right, just to get in the house at that price? Apparently, right, needless to say. Also, one last thing about renovation, right? When you buy a house at 338,000 and you put in 200,000 for renovation, for example, that does not mean that the house is going to be 538,000, yeah, in value. No. Ultimately, when you do renovation, for it to somewhat transfer more value into the valuation process later, first of all, it needs to be recognized, it needs to be safe, it needs to have CCC, and the drawings needs to be approved by your local authority. A lot of people cowboy, extend. Sometimes banks will not finance the new owner in order to buy your house because of that lack of certification. Just putting it out there. The second thing, what dictates valuation is also specifications, is dimensions and scale more than materials. Which means if you extend car porch, extend bedroom, extend kitchen, so from 1,400 square feet now you extend to 1,007 square feet, yes, then you are worth more than your neighbor. Not because that you put gold in your ceiling, you put marble flooring, those kind of thing doesn't really translate much in the valuation process later. And I guess that's all for this email. Few things first. I think the major communication between you and her about the future plan first. Like, are you going to move into Seremban together with me, or what is the plan, right? Do you foresee that I move in with you, or you will Monday to Friday, stay in KL while I work. Then every Friday night you will travel back to Seremban and will hang out in Seremban. Then I can sometimes go back to KL. What's the format like? But this is before marriage. What if after marriage? What's going to be the plan? If she don't work, what can you do in your power to close up that gap of missing income? And these are the conversations that both of you will need to have. Then coming back to the property, new or old, just like I mentioned, if it's based on one person's income only, you both cannot afford the new house because it's tabulated based on two persons' income. And that's something that I don't encourage at all, which is to share name and buy a property where you guys are not even confirmed on the situations on living just yet. Then if you're buying the old house, 338,000, it looks cheap compared to the new house, but that's not the main comparison. It should be compared to the median price of the surrounding. Then also look into the conditions that we mentioned just now. Was it left abandoned for 3 years, or did the owner just left 1 month ago? It's going to have a very different condition altogether. Then to really narrow down that gap of information, to get in contractors, maybe ask the agent, hey, can I go and see the house again? I want to bring my contractor, just to have the right estimation of renovation fee. Then renovation is divided into necessities and nice to have. So what are the necessities? And maybe you can do that first, live within. Then until when you guys finally want to get married, you have a huge promotion or your business breakthrough, you earn a lot of money, then only you go full-fledged and renovate it later. So that's my advice if I'm in your position. But if the question is slightly different, where both of you confirm want to be in Seremban, both of you are married, very in love, really into property investment together, then should you get a new one or the old one? Then it's a whole different narration altogether, because it then depends also on your knowledge of money management. Besides property investment, right? The 200,000, if I were to put in crypto, what would it be? If I put into stocks, what would it be? And compare that against 1,500 extra for my money installment. So it's a whole different discussion altogether, but we'll leave it for another day lah. Okay, and that's all for today. Thank you very much again for sending in the email. I hope you're all the best. And for those who still have any questions regarding real estate, do just email me at taniherng@gmail.com, or you can just DM me on Instagram, iherng, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Ciao!